Another season of OWCS Korea regular season play is in the history books. All the big hitters are preparing for the big moment, the postseason of Korea, with the opportunity to eventually go on to the OWCS World Finals being held in Stockholm, Sweden. The top 8 teams from the regular season standings all have their respective opportunity in this tournament to move on to the final tournament, which I think of as the real playoff bracket, aka the Road to World Finals Korea tournament. This is more so just a precursor, and honestly, the stakes are not all that high unless you're a play-in team, aka the bottom half of the standings. Most teams already know their fate, and winning or losing this tournament really won't matter. The top 4 literally already get an auto pass. It's just a matter of who makes it through the play-ins to decide who joins. The top 6 automatically go, so the only teams that are really fighting for anything aside from glory are those play-in teams. Honestly, more so, it should be used as a talking point in a way to discover who truly is the best of this region, because so far it has been completely and utterly chaotic, and it almost feels like a carbon copy of Stage 2 in a way, with how certain teams are able to beat each other, but then not other ones. It's very all over the place, and I'm hoping this tournament can help establish at least a little bit of consistency. And I figure it's a good time to look back at how the regular season went, because it did kind of fly by, and it was very interesting, so we're quickly going to do a vibe check of all of the teams. Not going to go too far into detail because, again, it's really not worth it in this situation. And then I'm going to give you my predictions at the end of the video as to how I think this tournament goes. So let's just get right into things. So taking a quick look at the final outcome of the regular season standings, things for the most part went, I guess, how you'd expect it, outside of maybe Crazy Raccoon, who didn't have a slow stage at all, didn't miss a beat, and were still pretty solid. Everything else kind of feels like how you'd expect. It was a very typical but also weird stage at the same time. It's a little difficult to describe, but I guess we're just going to start from the top and make our way to the bottom here. So Crazy Raccoon managed to get the 1 seed, and I thought that they'd have a bit of a slow start because Lip decided to take a bit of a break. He actually extended said break for up to 3 weeks. He didn't play until the final week of the regular season, so I thought for sure that Crazy Raccoon would drop some games just being without one of their best players, but that wasn't the case at all. They benefited a lot from where the meta currently stands with that double flex DPS setup being so prevalent. They put Splint in there, and he did an excellent job. He showcased his insane potential, and it goes to show that Crazy Raccoon, even when some of these good players leave, are probably going to figure it out because they have the coaching and the good overall team to make it work and get these new players acclimated quickly. CR had just the 1 loss on the resume, and of course, yet again, it came against T1, who for whatever reason just have their number, especially when the stakes are non-existent. They just beat them badly every single time, and this was yet another example of it. Tough loss, but not the biggest deal, especially considering they basically took care of business against everybody else without too much of an issue. Crazy Raccoon still looked pretty solid. It looked a little weird when Lip was out there, and I'm curious to see how that goes in future weeks. It started a little slow, a little awkward. I'm interested to see how fast he can get back into the swing of it. Crazy Raccoon could end up flopping big time in this tournament, or they could surprise us if Lip ends up unlocking even more of their power or something like that. Then in second place, being very steady and consistent as usual, was T1. Like I said, absolutely crushed Crazy Raccoon. They looked extremely happy in this meta. Honestly, even more comfortable than in the previous stage where they already did really well. I also thought they benefited a lot from Wu Yang and the double flex setup. They seem to be doing really well on Sombra, who's becoming more and more prevalent as the weeks go on over there in Korea. Not to mention that Donghack has just been an absolute force. He's unlocked even more characters that he can play at a high level. Now that Hazard and Ball and Winston are getting even more playtime, the dude's just having an absolute field day. This just feels like the right meta for T1 if they ever were to win a tournament, just because they like to go fast and they've got all of that available for them here. Lots of the right comfort picks right at their disposal. Now it's basically on them. The only thing I'll say is I'm a little concerned about what happens if they were to potentially match up with Falcons, because for whatever reason, just like with Crazy Raccoon not being able to beat T1, T1 just can't seem to beat Falcons ever. Falcons, even though they were so up and down, absolutely manhandled those guys yet again. Hanbin even played Wrecking Ball at one point. It was an absolute mess. And I kind of feel bad for Donghack. He just can't beat some of his former teammates for whatever reason, so if they were to meet in the bracket, things could get troublesome. Speaking of Team Falcons, they managed to get the number 3 seed with a 6-2 record on the stage. Things started a bit slow for them, but they were able to heat up pretty quickly once they got over the hump. I was pretty wrong about how things would go for them. I thought they'd continue to be dominant because they usually are a very momentum-based team, but it would seem that the super drastic change to the meta kind of destroyed any opportunity for that to happen. Go figure. Very wrong about that, but I think they have since then recovered. It started off slow. They lost 2 of their first 3, including a random 5-map loss to Zeta Division for some reason. But since that loss, they have settled in. They've won 5 straight games, all of which were 3-0, and they're starting to look comfortable out there. As the meta has developed, we're seeing more swaps happen mid-game, which is perfect for a guy like Proper and his flexibility between the Tracer and the Sombra. He's playing a lot of that stuff, so Merit doesn't have to sacrifice his level of comfort. Seems like the backline has settled into the role and what they have to do with Wu Yang and everything. And on top of it, at least from the recent trends with the last couple of games, they're starting to play more Hanbin than someone, and I'm a fan of that personally. Just because Hanbin, whenever he plays a lot, typically good things happen for this Falcons team if you look at how things have gone historically when he's in the lineup. I love that he has access to the D.Va and the Zarya right now. It's a good spot for him. We're even seeing him play Wrecking Ball. Love the confidence that he's showcasing out there despite splitting more playtime recently. Falcons look good, and I wouldn't be surprised if they go on a run here. Then at the 4 spot, and someone who's definitely not looking as good, you've got Zeta Division, and I just don't know what to say about these guys at this point. I was really excited when they got an actual main support player, and being able to put Alfie back on DPS, and maybe getting Mag involved in certain situations, but they've just been so inconsistent. At moments, you see bright spots. They were able to be somewhat competitive against good teams, and they even beat Team Falcons, like I said before. But in other moments, they just can't string it together consistently. Whenever they look good, whenever they reel you in, then they suddenly have a random loss to Wei. Like, I just don't understand how this team can operate this way, and I'm not going to fall into the trap of being optimistic about them anymore. They have their good spots, they have their bad spots, but when it comes to actually delivering, they usually don't. And until they prove me otherwise, there's no real reason to believe in them or discuss them much at all. At 5th place, and the first participant in the play-in, is Wei. They're still sticking around after a couple of stages. They've maintained some kind of relevance, some kind of steady pace. Their players seem to be doing fine still, but they're still not really a team to take all that seriously, you know? They're able to take care of business against the teams they should beat, but they don't do much of anything else. It was cool that they were able to prep well and beat Zeta Division 3-1, but even they aren't rated all that highly, and in return for that win, they also lost 3-2 to Onside, who you feel like they should definitely be better than. This Wei team's in an awkward spot. Their stocks have fallen a lot, and there's not all that much faith in them to be a really strong performer in the tournament. They're still a favorite to make it through the play-in and get to the next part of this thing, but outside of that, I'm not really sure how much they have left. In 6th place, and I'm very happy to say this, you had Onside Gaming, who managed to actually have the same record as Wei, just with a slightly worse map differential. I'm very proud of how competitive this team looked, and I'm glad to see that the new additions they made with Knife and Kellen have made some kind of difference, have made them feel more competitive and more well-rounded. I kind of prefer where this team is going compared to Wei. I think they've developed more over time, whereas at the beginning of the stage, it was pretty typical where they're beating who they're supposed to 3-0, but then they're getting crushed by the good teams. But then in their last 3 games, it felt like something started to click. They almost beat Zeta, who Wei just barely beat. Then they follow up by beating Wei in a 5-map series, which is the team that you're probably trying to overcome. Like, that's where you're going to be at your best. That's your max level potential. So beating them was a really good sign. And then they finish off the stage by beating Old Ocean, who some people would argue was like one of their biggest competition to be in this position to be top 6 to begin with. So they finished off the stage relatively strong. And again, I think with how the meta's developing, that it really favors their playstyle. Despite having Kilo out there as this known hit scan, He's been playing a lot of Sombra, and it's been working for them. I think they're in a pretty good spot right now to be this underdog team that you don't take all that seriously, but just might be able to finish not only first in the play-in, but maybe give another team a scare when they get to the actual tournament. I like where this team's going. Then at 7th place, getting just 2 wins on the stage, was OWCS. And they were a bit of a letdown. They showed some regression compared to the previous stage, which, if you remember from my video at the beginning of the stage, it's probably not all that surprising due to the losses and other teams kind of just getting better around them. They started off on a 4-game losing streak, then smack dab between losing 4 and losing 2. They're able to pick up 2 wins against the teams that they should beat. Mirror Gaming, who are just not very good, and then Cheeseburger, who they barely beat, by the way. It's been a very unimpressive stage for OWCS. Outside of their wins, they've only taken 1 map, and it doesn't seem like Jae Hong is doing all that well adjusting to Wu Ying. I haven't been impressed with the gameplay I've seen. Sometimes they do show fight. It feels like they can play a couple of different things somewhat well, but nothing great, and I think that's the problem. Right now, with where things are at, they don't specialize in one particular thing, whereas before, in the previous stage, it did feel like they have that. It's kind of just Becky or bust for this team, and he just can't do it all alone. OWCS don't have much momentum at all, and it's hard to imagine them getting through this play-in as much as I'd love them to. And wrapping up the teams that made it through, you've got Cheeseburger, who made it over Mirror Gaming without question. Mirror was just absolutely terrible. Cheeseburger make it in as the number 8 seed, going 1-7, but actually winning as many maps as OWCS did, so that's something, I guess. I think some of their young players looked good at times. You could see the development, you could see the vision, but there was just no consistency to be found. They started off really strong in a surprising way. Zeta Division had to reverse sweep them. That kind of came out of nowhere. But then they kind of cooled down and there wasn't much else to discuss until they had a 5-mapper with OWCS, which they unfortunately lost. This Cheeseburger team doesn't have much going. They're a bit too young, in my opinion, to really do any damage, and they're probably more so a filler team than anything else, sadly, but we'll hope for the best. So there's our 8 teams and where we currently stand, so let's get into the discussion of the last chance qualifier and the regional playoff. So we got to get 2 teams through the LCQ to make it into the regional playoff. It's going to be first to 3 in all of those LCQ games. There's a lower bracket game, it's a single elimination, OWCS versus Cheeseburger, and then in the upper bracket, it's Way versus Onside. Whoever wins that game moves on to the regional playoff. So in my opinion, this is how it's going to go. I think just to keep things spicy and interesting that I'm going to pick Onside to beat Way. They've already done it once. I don't see why they can't do it again. I love where they're headed. I love putting some stock into this team. I love the idea of them being aggressive with the Sombra and not showing any mercy. I like being able to switch between Kellen and attack at will. Then I think they're going to beat Way. They're the newcomers. They have more to prove, and they're going to beat them out of nowhere, but after that, Way should be able to handle whoever they play next without a problem. Honestly, if it's Onside who loses, same exact thought process, but it's probably going to be OWCS who beat Cheeseburger. Maybe it's a close match, maybe it's not, but they're completely outclassed by Way and Onside, so it should be those two no matter what getting through the LCQ. Way and Onside just have better teams for sure, and they're a lot more competent in the current meta, so I'll leave it at that. Cheeseburger and OWCS, their journey is going to end here, while Way and Onside move on to the regional playoff, which means they automatically make it to the final Korea tournament being held in a couple of weeks from now. So that would mean the 6 teams that make it to the last Korea tournament of the year to decide who goes to DreamHack Sweden are Way, Onside, Zeta, Falcons, T1, and Crazy Raccoon. From there, again, nothing else really matters aside from figuring out who might actually be the best of this bunch, and if it's not just a rock, paper, scissors affair. With that said, being bold and putting everything out there just doesn't do anything for me. I don't know how worth it is to put a ton of time, effort, and thought into making a type of prediction for this bracket, especially because there is some randomness to it. The top 2 seeds, Crazy Raccoon and T1, it's going to decide on who CR picks as their first round opponent, so everything's kind of up in the air though. Again, the only thing that really matters to me is hopefully deciding who actually is the best of this bunch, or what the tier list would be looking like, so to speak. let's just get it over with. Obviously, Falcons are going to beat Way, Onside, or whoever else makes that of the play-in. That is just not even a thing worth discussing. Zeta, you're maybe a little bit more worried that they could lose to one of these opponents. They literally lost to Way in almost Onside, but I'd like to think with the star power they have and the vets that they'll at least be able to get through that match. All of them are first to fourth, so it's going to be pretty intense. I think there's a lot of maps to go out there and make improvements if you struggle early on. I just don't see them losing in the first round. That would be low even for them. Then it's all on Crazy Raccoon, right? Do they want to pick the more easy opponent on paper in Zeta? I mean, a lot of people would argue that's best, but if you know Crazy Raccoon, you know that they are not one to shy away from a challenge of Falcons. They've willingly picked them before, and I honestly think they're going to do it again. There are no stakes, like I said before, and, even if they were to lose to them, they'll probably just get top 3 anyway. I think just to flex on them and to put them in their place again and to get some good practice that they're probably going to pick them, which leaves T1 with Zeta, which is very beneficial for them because they just play everything better than them. With Falcons and Crazy Raccoon, I think that game could be a lot closer than their first match, which literally happened in the very first week when everybody was still trying to figure things out. The meta's more so set, they've had more time to practice it, there's room for Falcons to make this a competitive series if they go up against Crazy Raccoon, and I mean, in the result that they play T1 instead, they literally just bullied them like 2 weeks ago, so that works for them too. Big opportunity for Falcons here, and I do think they're going to take at least a couple of maps against Crazy Raccoon. I think that they don't mind a Sombra mirror, just because Sombra is played a lot differently than back in the day when Lip was truly dominant on her. We saw it last week where he was playing the Sombra, Lip and it was not bad, but he was trying to warm up to things still. He can't really get away with being the aggressive Sombra player that he used to be, just assassinating targets and farming EMPs. It's a bit harder with how Sombra has changed, so it kind of changes the way that Crazy Raccoon has to play and approach things, so that definitely works in Falcon's favor. But I don't really know how much else they have going for them. I mean, if they can establish Hanbin early in this game, maybe get him on a good Zarya map, that could certainly help too. But Crazy Raccoon just usually have Falcon's number, especially in like a non-playoff, like true playoff setting. So I'm expecting Crazy Raccoon to come out on top here. I like that they have options now at DPS. That is going to make them a bit tougher to prepare for. I think that is a bit advantageous where they have multiple playstyles you're going to have to deal with. So that could be something that helps put them over the edge in this first round, either against Falcons or Zeta. But I wouldn't be surprised if they don't look as sharp as people are hoping. Man, it's just so hard. This is literally rock, paper, scissors based off of the information we have. T1 can beat the brakes off of Crazy Raccoon, so if they meet them in the finals, that could be really good for them. They might end up walking away with a W. But if they play Team Falcons, you're probably going to favor Falcons because they always beat the daylight out of T1 for some reason. Then you have Crazy Raccoon, who usually beat Falcons, especially when the stakes aren't all that high. We've seen Zeta beat Falcons multiple times randomly, again, when the stakes aren't all that high usually. It's just such a weird cycle here, and Crazy Raccoon's pick is going to very much decide how this tournament bracket goes, at least in my opinion. Again, to me, the most likely scenario, just because Crazy Raccoon love the challenge and they understand that losing isn't the biggest deal, is that they're probably going to pick Falcons to give it to them. Then T1, they'll probably beat Zeta. We'll have a Crazy Raccoon T1 finals, and I actually am going to pick T1 to win this. We got to be spicy somewhere, right? This feels like a carbon copy of Stage 2. Everything's so boring and predictable. We got to change things up. And I think this is the right time. In this weird, in-the-middle tournament where there's not that much on the line, but you still want to perform, this is where T1 can take advantage. If there ever was a time for this cursed franchise to get a first place, it would be in a Mickey Mouse tournament like this. So we're going to pick them. But genuinely, they do have a shot at this. If they can get through the pressure, then everything should work in their favor. They've already shown they can outplay this team a bunch of times. They like playing them in their own game. Donghak has shown multiple times he can outplay Junbin in a Wrecking Ball setup. Donghak's arguably the best ball in the world right now. He can play all the dive heroes at a super high level. They're not afraid of Crazy Raccoon. They've made that abundantly clear. And I think at the end of the day, like I was saying before, there's a lot of situations where Crazy Raccoon may be testing some things here. I think that as they get Lip more accustomed to the team, that they'll get better, but early on there could be some growing pains as they try and figure out this super fast-paced Sombra thing, which T1 seem to be absolutely loving right now, by the way. Crazy Raccoon, knowing that there's not much on the line, may sandbag a little here. I'm banking on that. They're going to troll Falcons for fun, but then throw against T1, and that'll be that. And in this hypothetical, my third place match, you would have Falcons versus Zeta, and let's just be for real. Zeta never beat Falcons when it matters, not a single time. Maybe you could argue, just like with T1, now that it's a situation where it doesn't matter, maybe they'll win, reverse psychology, but this is a situation where I'm overruling it. Falcons literally live rent-free in their heads anytime there's a big tournament. They beat them 10 times out of 10, and I just think they're a way better team right now. You can't count on Zeta to do anything at all. They're so all over the place. They're so inconsistent. They beat Falcons, yeah, but they've also lost to some not-so-great teams at the same time, and I think Falcons are just getting stronger. They've gotten a lot stronger since that last matchup, and they're getting Hanbin more involved with the team, and that's usually when they're at their best. I'm feeling pretty confident in Falcons, and to be honest with you, if they don't get picked by Crazy Raccoon, they're probably going to the final. But yeah, that pretty much does it for my thoughts and feelings on this upcoming tournament. Again, there's really not that much to it. It's not all that exciting. Nothing's really on the line here. We're just trying to establish some kind of baseline. Let me know how you think things are going to go down in the comments below. Let me know what your bracket's looking like. I'd love to hear you. And make sure to give this video a like and subscribe as well if you're into OWCS discussions just like this. I've been ATP, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.